The metallic clang of the cell door echoed ominously, the final punctuation to the guards' jeers as they shoved Dr. Alec Brandt inside. The room was dim, illuminated only by the faint red glow of warning lights embedded in the high ceiling. The air was thick with the acrid stench of blood and sweat. Alec, a decorated war medic and veteran of countless battles, dusted himself off and surveyed his new prison. His captors, the reptilian Krethak, had labeled him a traitor for saving not just human soldiers, but also alien lives during the conflict. To them, his compassion was weakness. To Alec, it was the foundation of his humanity. "You'll be meeting Kalethar tonight," one of the guards had sneered. "A monster deserves another." He hadn't understood their meaning until now. From the shadowy depths of the cell came a low, guttural growl that resonated through Alec's bones. He turned, his sharp green eyes locking onto two glowing orbs in the darkness. The creature's breathing was deep and heavy, each exhale stirring the fetid air. The beast emerged from the shadows, Kalethar, the Draconis Maximus's legendary prisoner. His scales shimmered like liquid metal, and his massive frame seemed too large for even this oversized cell. Razor-sharp claws clicked against the stone floor as he approached, his tail swishing with lethal grace. Alec didn't flinch. He stood his ground, his expression calm but calculating. "So," he said, his voice steady, "they've thrown me in with you. I take it, you're not a fan of visitors." Kalethar stopped, his golden eyes narrowing. He tilted his massive head as though puzzled by Alec's lack of fear. A low rumble emanated from his chest, somewhere between curiosity and warning. "Figures," Alec muttered, sinking to the ground cross-legged, keeping his gaze fixed on the dragon. "They expect you to kill me, but I've seen enough death for one lifetime, so if you're going to do it, just get it over with." The dragon remained still, studying Alec with unnerving intensity. Minutes passed, but Kalethar didn't strike. Instead, he let out a deep huff and lay down, his massive body curling protectively around a corner of the cell. Alec raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's unexpected." The cell was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the prison's environmental systems. Alec leaned back against the wall, his eyes never leaving Kalethar. The dragon had closed his eyes, but Alec could tell he wasn't asleep. His ears twitched with every slight movement, his massive tail occasionally flicking with irritation. "Why don't you just eat me and be done with it?" Alec said, half to himself. "That's what they want, isn't it?" Kalethar's eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light. The dragon tilted his head again, almost as if amused. His voice, deep and gravelly, filled the room for the first time. "Why would I waste my energy on you, human? I eat only those who deserve it." Alec blinked, momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected the creature to speak, much less with such eloquence. "Well," Alec said, recovering quickly, "guess I don't fit the bill. Good to know." Kalethar let out a low growl that might have been a chuckle. "You are different. Most who are thrown to me cower, beg, or scream. You do not." "I've seen too much to be scared of what comes next," Alec replied, his voice steady. "And I've learned that appearances rarely tell the full story." The dragon's eyes narrowed, his interest piqued. "And what story do you think I have?" "Probably not one you'd want to share," Alec said, shrugging. "But I'd wager you didn't end up here because you're a mindless killer." Kalethar regarded him silently for a long moment before rumbling. "Perhaps there's more to you than I thought." Alec leaned forward slightly, sensing a crack in the dragon's defensive exterior. "And perhaps there's more to you than the monster they make you out to be." Kalethar's lips curled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth, though it wasn't quite a snarl. "Careful, human. Flattery won't save you." "Not flattery," Alec said. "Observation. I've made a career of seeing what others miss, and what I see is a creature who's been wronged, not a mindless beast." The dragon didn't reply, but the tension in the room shifted. For the first time, Alec felt that Kalethar was no longer an enemy, or at least not a threat. In the silence that followed, a strange understanding began to take root between the medic and the monster. Unseen by either of them, the Krethak guards watched through a hidden camera, their amusement fading to unease. "This wasn't supposed to happen," one muttered. "What do we do now?" The answer was simple. Nothing yet. But the guards had made a fatal error in underestimating Alec Brandt, and the bond he was beginning to forge with the creature they called a monster. The next morning, The red light in the cell dimmed as the artificial cycle shifted. Alec woke to find Kalethar pacing the length of the enclosure, his tail swishing agitatedly, the floor trembling slightly with every step. "You seem restless," Alec observed, rising to his feet. He rolled his shoulders, shaking off the stiffness from sleeping on the cold floor. "Prison life not all it's cracked up to be?" Kalethar paused, his golden eyes narrowing. "Your humor is misplaced, human." "I'd call it a coping mechanism," Alec said, stepping closer but staying mindful of the dragon's space. His gaze swept over Kalethar's massive frame, noting the faded scars that marred his iridescent scales. Some were jagged, others clean and precise, as if inflicted with surgical intent. "Those don't look like battlefield wounds." Kalethar's growl rumbled low in his throat, a sound of anger and pain. "You are observant. These are the marks of captivity, the price of rebellion." "Rebellion?" Alec pressed, his curiosity overriding his caution. Kalethar settled onto his haunches, his massive claws curling into the stone floor. "The Krethak used me as a weapon, a beast to terrorize their enemies. I resisted their control. I refused to destroy innocents at their command. For that, they punished me." Alec's jaw tightened. The story mirrored too many he'd heard before. The abuse of power, the exploitation of those deemed lesser. And now they keep you here, as a tool to scare their prisoners into submission. Kalethar's eyes burned with renewed fury. "Yes, they throw their condemned to me, expecting carnage. And yet, they fear me more for the mercy I sometimes show." Alec nodded, understanding dawning. "That's why you didn't attack me." The dragon inclined his head slightly. "You are different, human. You look at me not with fear, but with curiosity." Alec crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. "And you? How do you see me?" Kalethar tilted his head, the faintest glimmer of amusement in his gaze. "I see a man who hides his strength behind a facade of calm, a healer who has known war." The words struck a chord in Alec, but he said nothing. Instead, he approached cautiously, his movements deliberate. "Let me see those wounds," he said, gesturing to the scars. "I can't heal the past, but I can make sure they don't hurt anymore." Kalethar hesitated, then lowered himself to the ground, his massive body coiling in a way that allowed Alec access. "Do what you will, human, but tread carefully." As Alec worked, applying a salve he'd crafted from scavenged materials, he spoke quietly. "You said they used you as a weapon. That means they underestimated you, not just your strength but your mind." Kalethar rumbled, his tail twitching. "They see only what they wish to see, a monster, a beast to be controlled, but their arrogance blinds them to the truth." Alec finished treating one particularly deep scar and leaned back. "Which is?" "That I am no longer their pawn," Kalethar said, his voice a low growl. "And neither are you." Alec raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm not already planning my escape?" Kalethar's lips curled, exposing his sharp teeth in what might have been a grin. "Good. Then we are aligned." Before Alec could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor outside the cell. The door slid open, revealing a squad of Kthak guards armed with stun batons and plasma rifles. Their leader, a towering figure clad in segmented armor, sneered at the sight before him. "Getting cozy with the beast, human?" the guard captain mocked. "Enjoy it while you can. Your execution is scheduled for tomorrow." Alec's expression didn't waver. "I'll pencil it in." The captain's sneer twisted into a scowl. "We'll see how funny you are when you're feeding the dragon." Kalethar let out a low growl, rising to his full height. The guards tensed, their weapons aimed at the massive creature. But Kalethar didn't attack. Instead, he glanced at Alec, a silent exchange passing between them. "Leave the food," Alec said, gesturing to the tray one of the guards carried. "And get out." The captain hesitated, then barked an order. The tray was shoved into the cell and the door slammed shut behind the retreating guards. Alec crouched, examining the food, a mix of unappetizing rations and a vial of bright orange liquid. "What's that?" Kalethar asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "Could be poison," Alec said bluntly, sniffing the vial. "Or just another way to mess with us." Kalethar rumbled. "The Krethak thrive on control. They will not stop until they believe we are broken." Alec set the vial aside and stood, his expression resolute. "Then we give them a reason to regret underestimating us." The dragon's golden eyes gleamed with approval. "What do you propose, human?" "First we survive," Alec said. "Then we fight back, together." Kilithar let out a deep, resonant growl, his scales shimmering in the dim light. Agreed. Let us remind them that monsters come in many forms. The next day, Alec and Kilithar sat in the cell, their minds racing with ideas. The overhead lights flickered, a constant reminder of the Krethak's disregard for their prisoners. Alec's fingers tapped against the stone floor rhythmically, his thoughts sharp and calculated. We need to turn their arrogance against them, Alec said, breaking the silence. Kilithar's golden eyes narrowed. Explain. They've already shown us their weakness, fear. They keep you locked up because they can't control you. But what happens when the monster escapes? Alec leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. We make a show of it. Let them see you break free, wreak havoc. While they're focused on you, I'll disable the security systems and open the other cells. A full-scale riot. Kilithar rumbled thoughtfully, his claws scraping against the stone. And you believe the other prisoners will fight for us? They'll fight for themselves, Alec replied, but their chaos will buy us time to reach the hangar and escape. Kilithar tilted his head, his lips curling into what might have been a grin. You are bold, human. I admire that. Alec smirked. Bold doesn't mean reckless. This has to be precise. If we miss a step, they'll kill us both. The dragon shifted, his massive frame coiling with tension. And if we succeed, then we show them what real monsters can do. That night, the Krethak guards returned, escorting Alec to the interrogation chamber, a routine they used to break prisoners. Alec allowed himself to be led, his body language relaxed despite the tension humming beneath his skin. As he walked through the corridors, Alec memorized every detail. The placement of cameras, the patrol patterns, the faint hum of the energy grid. His plan required precision, and this was his only chance to confirm it. In the cell, Kilithar waited, his senses sharp. He could feel the unease of the guards outside, their nervous glances toward his door. The dragon's claws scraped against the floor, his tail flicking with anticipation. Hours later, Alec was thrown back into the cell, his face bruised but his eyes gleaming with determination. Everything's in place, he muttered, wiping blood from his lip. Kilithar rumbled approvingly. And my role? Alec crouched beside him, laying out a crude diagram he'd scratched into the stone. Tomorrow, when they bring the food tray, you'll fake an outburst, roar, slam the walls, the works. They'll send reinforcements to contain you. That's when I'll disable the energy grid from their command console. Kilithar let out a low growl. And then you break out, Alec said, meeting the dragon's intense gaze. Show them what they fear most. The following day, the plan unfolded like clockwork. As the guards approached with the food tray, Kilithar rose to his full height, his scales shimmering ominously. He let out a thunderous roar, shaking the very foundations of the cell. The guards froze, their fear palpable. One of them barked into a communicator, calling for reinforcements. Alec slipped into the shadows as chaos erupted. Kilithar slammed his massive body against the walls, denting the reinforced steel. Sparks flew as the energy field flickered, struggling to contain him. The moment the reinforcements arrived, Alec acted. Using a stolen access card he'd hidden in his boot, he slipped into the control room adjacent to the cell block. The guards were too distracted to notice as Alec worked quickly, bypassing the security protocols and shutting down the energy grid. Alarms blared, and the cell doors across the prison slid open. Prisoners of every species spilled into the halls, their cries of rage and freedom echoing through the corridors. Kilithar, now unrestrained, lunged at the guards, his claws swiping through their ranks with deadly precision. He avoided unnecessary bloodshed, but his overwhelming presence sent the Krethak soldiers scattering. Alec rejoined Kilithar in the chaos, dodging panicked guards and prisoners alike. "Hangars this way," he shouted, leading the dragon through the fray. As they approached the hangar, a squad of heavily armed Krethak soldiers blocked their path. Kilithar let out another roar, his golden eyes blazing with fury. "Go, Alec. I'll hold them." Alec hesitated, then nodded. "Don't get yourself killed, big guy." Kilithar smirked, a terrifying sight, and charged the soldiers, his massive form a blur of destruction. Alec sprinted to the hangar, his heart pounding as the alarms grew louder. Inside, he found a sleek, unguarded vessel, an older model but functional. Alec powered it up, its engines roaring to life just as Kilithar barreled into the hangar, his wings outstretched and his scales gleaming with victory. "Get in!" Alec shouted. Kalithar leapt onto the ship, folding his massive body into the cargo hold as Alec took the controls. The ship lifted off, its thrusters blazing as it tore through the hangar's shields and into the starry void. As the prison ship faded behind them, Kalithar rumbled, his voice filled with satisfaction. "Your plan worked, human." Alec grinned, his hands steady on the controls. "We're not free yet, but we're getting there." With the stars stretching endlessly before them, the medic and the monster prepared for the next chapter of their escape, together. The stolen vessel hurtled through space, its engines screaming as Alec pushed the ship to its limits. Alarms blared in the cockpit as the Krethak prison ship launched pursuit vessels, sleek and deadly, designed to overpower escapees before they could reach the safety of neutral space. Kalithar crouched in the cargo hold, his claws digging into the metal floor as the ship jolted under enemy fire. His golden eyes narrowed as he turned to Alec, his voice rumbling through the comms. "Their ships are faster. If we do nothing, they'll overtake us." "Working on it," Alec shouted, his hands flying over the controls. He threw the ship into a sudden barrel roll, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts. "Any bright ideas, big guy?" Kalithar growled thoughtfully. "Head for the Arcanus Nebula. Its ion storms will disrupt their tracking systems." Alec raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You know your space lanes." "I was a weapon," Kalithar replied, his voice tinged with bitterness. "They trained me for more than killing." "Fair enough," Alec muttered, adjusting their course. "Hold on." The ship veered sharply, plunging into the swirling chaos of the Arcanus Nebula. The vibrant clouds of ionized gas illuminated the cockpit, casting eerie colors over Alec's determined face. The pursuing Krethak vessels followed, but their systems immediately began to falter, their targeting locks breaking as interference from the nebula intensified. Kalithar's deep chuckle filled the comms. "They are struggling. Good." "Not out of the woods yet," Alec said, his voice tight. The ship's sensors beeped frantically, warning of an incoming Krethak dreadnought skirting the edge of the nebula. "They've got a big one waiting for us on the other side." Kalithar's growl deepened. "Then we strike first." As the dreadnought loomed on the edge of the nebula, Alec and Kalithar prepared for a daring move. Alec diverted power from the ship's shields to enhance its stealth capabilities, reducing their energy signature to a faint blip. "We'll use the nebula to hide," Alec explained, his hands deftly adjusting the ship's systems. "Get in close, disable their engines, and make our escape before they can react." Kalithar rumbled his approval. "I trust you, human. Let's show them what a medic and a monster can do." The ship glided through the dense ion clouds, approaching the massive Krethak vessel undetected. Alec's fingers hovered over the weapons console, his breath steady despite the tension. "Almost there," he whispered, the dreadnought's bulk filling the viewport. "Just a little closer." The moment the dreadnought came into range, Alec unleashed a concentrated volley of ion torpedoes. The projectiles struck the ship's engines, sending arcs of blue lightning cascading across its hull. The dreadnought lurched, its systems flickering as the ion overload disabled its propulsion. "We've got a window," Alec said, gripping the controls. "Hang on." As the smaller Krethak vessels scrambled to respond, Kalithar took action. The dragon leapt from the cargo hold into the vacuum of space, his scales shimmering with an ethereal glow. Using his immense strength and precise movements, he tore through the Krethak fighters, his claws rending their hulls with ease. Alec watched in awe, piloting the ship to keep Kalithar within range. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Kalithar let out a triumphant roar, his voice carrying even in the vacuum, amplified by the comm system. "This is my vengeance and my freedom." With the dreadnought disabled and the fighters in disarray, Alec maneuvered the ship through the chaos, picking up Kalithar before the Krethak forces could regroup. The dragon climbed back into the cargo hold, his body coiling with satisfaction. As they emerged from the nebula, the stars stretched endlessly before them. Alec leaned back in his seat, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "We did it," Kalithar rumbled in agreement, his golden eyes gleaming. "You are clever, human, and brave, and you're not as scary as they made you out to be," Alec replied with a faint smile. Kalithar huffed, a sound that might have been a laugh. "Do not push your luck." Their bond, forged in the fires of escape and survival, was now stronger than ever. Together, they had defied the Krethak and proven that even the galaxy's most feared enemies could find common ground. But as the stars beckoned them forward, Alec knew their journey was far from over. "Where to next?" Kelethar asked, his voice filled with anticipation. Alec grinned. "Anywhere but here." Alec and Kelethar, their bond solidified by their daring escape, set their sights on a remote sector rumored to house a hidden sanctuary for those resisting the Krethak regime. Known as Haven's Reach, it was a haven for outlaws, rebels, and those seeking freedom from tyranny. The journey to Haven's Reach was fraught with tension. Alec's mind churned with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would they find allies, or would their presence draw more enemies? As their stolen ship approached the sector, a massive asteroid field loomed, obscuring the sanctuary's location. Alec maneuvered carefully, following the faint signal of a hidden beacon. Kelethar watched silently, his golden eyes scanning the void. "There," Alec said, spotting a cluster of camouflaged structures embedded within the largest asteroid. The sanctuary was alive with activity, ships darting in and out, banners of various rebel factions fluttering in artificial gravity. Their arrival drew immediate attention. Fighters circled their ship, demanding identification. Alec opened a comm line. "We're not your enemies. My name is Alec Brandt, and I have someone you'll want to meet." The fighters escorted them to the sanctuary's central platform. As Alec and Kelethar disembarked, a crowd gathered, their expressions a mix of awe and suspicion. A tall woman with a cybernetic arm stepped forward, her presence commanding. "I'm Commander Lyrics, leader of Haven's Reach," she said, her voice sharp. Her gaze shifted to Kelethar. "You brought a Krethak beast here? You'd better have a good explanation." Kelethar stepped forward, his massive frame towering over the crowd. "I am no one's beast," he rumbled. "I am Kelethar, and I fight against the Krethak." The crowd murmured, their fear turning to intrigue. Alec stepped beside Kelethar, his voice steady. "The Krethak made the mistake of underestimating us. Together we escaped their strongest prison. Now we're here to fight back." Lyric studied them, her sharp eyes narrowing. "You're either the galaxy's biggest fools, or its greatest hope. Let's see which." Over the following days, Alec and Kelethar integrated into the sanctuary's community, sharing their story and earning the trust of the rebels. Kelethar's presence became a symbol of defiance, his strength and intelligence inspiring others to join their cause. Alec, using his skills as a medic, tended to the injured and trained others in battlefield medicine. His calm demeanor and resourcefulness quickly earned him respect. The rebels began planning a major strike against a Krethak supply route, a mission that could cripple their operations in the sector. Alec and Kelethar volunteered to lead the assault, their unique bond proving invaluable in strategy and execution. On the day of the mission, Alec stood beside Kelethar, addressing the gathered rebels. "We've all been hurt by the Krethak. They think they're untouchable. But today, we show them they're wrong." The mission unfolded with precision. Kelethar, with Alec riding on his back, led the charge, their combined strength and cunning overwhelming the Krethak forces. The rebels seized the supplies, delivering a crippling blow to the enemy. The victory ignited hope across Haven's Reach, solidifying Alec and Kelethar as leaders in the fight for freedom. As the celebration erupted, Alec stood with Kelethar on a high platform, overlooking the sanctuary. "You've changed everything," Alec said, glancing at the dragon. "For them. For me." Kelethar's golden eyes gleamed. "And you have shown me what it means to fight for something greater than survival." As the stars glittered above, Alec felt a deep sense of purpose. Together, he and Kelethar had become more than just allies. They were a force that would shape the galaxy's future. Their journey was far from over, but one thing was certain. They were ready to face whatever came next. Side by side,